Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Tillery's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Tillery's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Tillery's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk a lot about what's going on with the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about Louisiana prospects. We'll get into LSU spring, how they're looking, talk a little bit about Coach O's extension, and also we'll get into some Will Wade and LSU basketball and to break it down for us. He's one of your favorites. You ask for him all the time. I get it constantly on Twitter, Facebook. When's Mike Detillier coming back on? You got him tonight. Mike Detillier is with us tonight. Mike, how you doing?
Thanks so much, Eric. Always my pleasure.
Always good to have you. Mike, it's your time of year. Well, it's year-round for you. But, again, you got your draft book, which is coveted around these parts and now nationwide. Tell us about that. Tell us about what's going on with you again with the radio, TV, and everything.
Well, I'm almost finished. As I told you, we kind of saved the end that mock draft to the end till try to get as much free agency as we can in the book, but it's basically a done deal, and we'll have it out first week in April. Should be around 4th or the 5th. Get it back from the printers, and we're ready to roll with it. Should be an interesting draft. Right. We still trying to figure out how we're going to handle all these hours of coverage.
Yes.
With only one pick in the first 4 rounds, but we'll make do. But listen, it's a good draft. It's the best defensive line draft I have ever done, 34 years. So it goes to show you the strength of this draft, especially early. That first 35, 40 picks going to be dominated with the big men. And I always say this: the 2 areas as it gets closer to draft time that make that little move up. Can't have either you got one or you're looking for one. Yep. Quarterbacks. Right. Big men, offensive, defensive linemen. And I think that, again, will happen this year.
Mike, how much has it changed for you in terms of your research, how you do things? When you first started off, there wasn't an internet.
No.
But now there is. Does it make it easier? Do you really not fool with it? Is it all communication? You going out and seeing the player, talking to coaches? Has it changed at all for you?
A little bit from the film watch.
Okay.
Because it's so much easier today to get than back then.
Right.
But I'm not somebody that's going to break this down into powder. Because I think when you start doing that, you're looking for negatives and you're forgetting about somebody's positives. And the combine does have its place. But I got asked this a couple of days ago, how many players you moved? 3. And that was because we were sort of jammed in one position, and so I was able to maneuver it around. My thing is, why would I waste 3 years of my life watching them, or 2 years or whatever, off of a workout in pajamas and slippers?
Sure.
Come on. That doesn't tell you if he can play or he can't play. It does give you some look at his athleticism. One thing it does tell me, too, is a guy that's worked hard. Because listen, when you work out well, that tells you know what you're doing.
Yes.
And you're working out hard. But it doesn't tell you if you can play or not. And then I think the most important part of it, and we're starting to hear it now, every year there's a player or 2 with a medical issue. And Sweat from Mississippi State with the heart issue. And I don't think that'll be as devastating to him as it's been to some other prospects. But those are the sort of things that you sort of look for. But everything is trendy. And again, the one thing that stays the same in 34 years, the Greeks settled this years ago. Got a chance to pick a really talented big man and a really talented small guy. Guess who you're going with? You're going with the big dude.
Right.
And so that has never changed throughout all the years. But you see more talent and depth at the wide receiver, tight end positions. A lot of that has to do with the fact 7-on-7 has sort of controlled the high school world, and I think the filter down into the college professional ranks, you're seeing it today.
Yes.
It's hard to find those edge pass rushers. There are always a couple of 3 guys every year that say, man, those guys are pretty good. But the years, I think, have maybe dwindled those numbers down quite a bit, where you see a lot of them in the interior. And that's where this year's draft group is really good at the defensive tackle, nose guard position. And also there's talent and depth at tight end. Because you know that 6'4", 6'5" guy that we play in defensive end, or rush guy, guess what he's doing? I'm playing tight end. So those sort of things have changed throughout the years. And 2 is the mechanics of a guy's got to be a certain height, weight, whatever. I do think you can't build a team on exceptions to the rule, but there are always those that can do it.
Yes.
Not every 5'9" linebacker is Sam Mills. Not every 5'9" safety is Tyrann Mathieu. Not every undersized running back is Darren Sproles.
Yes.
But there always are those exceptions to the rule. And I think you're going to see an exception this year where Kyler Murray is going to be the first pick in the draft. Right. And, I would have never guessed 5'10" for him. I'd have actually had to see it because, to me, he's a 5'9". But what the heck's the difference between 5'9", 5'10"? My thing about it is he is a unique player in his athleticism and his ability to throw the football accurately from the pocket. Now, in the NFL, it's different than at Oklahoma where you had guys running free downfield all over. How well he'll adjust and the coaching staff will adjust to put him in a position where the passing lanes become better sight view-wise for him in the NFL. But, man, he is one heck of a football player.
Do you think with Kyler Murray that teams will have to take a page from the Saints book on how they protected Breeze all these years, considering his height? Now, he's a little bit more athletic than obviously Breeze was or is. But do you think that's the way you set up an offensive line with a Kyler Murray?
I think what you do is steal exactly what Oklahoma's doing.
Okay.
Because, listen, it worked for Baker Mayfield. What Cleveland did last year, play calling wise, was in the same realm as with Oklahoma. That's why Lincoln Riley right now, he's the most highly sought after college coach to be a professional.
Right.
When he's right now, he is the quarterback whisperer when you look at what he's done. Now, if he turns Jalen Hurts into a big time passer, then you really have done something, because that's not his forte. To throw the football well, accurately, consistently. He's spurty as a passer. But I think it's to move him around a little bit and give him an avenue, short, quick passes, which you see so much in the college ranks. So sort of steal a little bit. And every NFL team is doing it. They're hiring college assistants to come in, teach us a little bit about the RPOs. Every team's got them. And, the Saints had one in Joe Brady. And then what happened with him, Coach O stole him and brought him to LSU.
Right. You mentioned Lincoln Riley. He's as you mentioned, one of the hottest coaches out there. There was a big rumor the other day about Peyton maybe going to Dallas, and one of the reasons why Bridgewater wouldn't sign. We all knew it was nonsense. But, as I keep hearing, again, the fact that they don't want to re-sign Jason Garrett, don't want to extend him, it makes me think that Lincoln Riley's got to be on their radar. Your thoughts?
My thing is, if Jerry goes after a big-name coach, it'll be Lincoln. It won't be Sean. But what you're hearing with Peyton from other teams, man, it's like college recruiting all over again. You talk to high school athletes, and we have so many camps in our area.
Right.
You'll talk to them, well, I'm being recruited by Alabama, but, so-and-so coach says, Coach Saban's going to retire. Last year, the big thing was, man, all these coaches are telling me Coach O's in a lot of trouble at LSU. So you're going to hear it no matter what. And they're I think some of that college stuff that was done is being thrown into the NFL. and use it any kind of way you need to or have to get the player to sign if it's a veteran free agent. And that's what happened with Sean. It got kind of thrown out there similar to what you've heard with college coaches.
But you know, I don't anticipate Sean Payton ever going to work for Jerry Jones because of the lack of control, where he has total control in the walls.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's, if you're really plugged into what's happening here, that's the narrative, right?
Now, if something happens and Stevie Jones runs the team, then that might be a different scenario. But as long as Jerry's in charge,
right?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's not going to work. But I could see him make a huge overture to Lincoln Riley, just because, you know, as a college coach, you know, and now you get to coach the Cowboys, you're not going to ask for total control.
No, not coming out of college.
And so Jerry will still have that. But if you're a proven NFL head coach, come on. You want the chalk in your hand at the end. You work for Jerry, you got to hand the chalk to him.
Right. Especially if you've been in a position like Sean Payton, where, again, the final say is yours.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You'll never get that in Dallas.
No, you're not going to. As long as Jerry's there, you're not going to get
That's interesting. Again, if ultimately his son takes over, which he will, again, how those dynamics could change.
Oh, no question. Stevie's personality is totally different. If we had a longer time. He was at Arkansas the same time Coach O was the disciplinarian coach, which I always tell him, I still don't know how you got that job, other than you knew how to kind of skirt around those rules pretty good. And he gave him the nickname Hip Sled Ed, because if you got in trouble, Ed would bring you out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he'd sit on top of that sled, and you rode him around. And so I suspect Stevie came in a little bit late a few times for curfew, and he was part of that moniker that he gave to Ed.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk a bit about the draft. You mentioned it a couple times. The position with the most quality depth at the top, you know, guys that are able to come in and play immediately, and maybe some players that the audience should look out for.
My top-rated player is Quinnen Williams from Alabama. Pete Jenkins told me this, and he said it's Ozier online, but that trying to block Quinnen Williams was like trying to catch a bar of wet soap, that you never really get your hands on it. And the plays he made from the interior were impressive this year. And he was getting double teamed every game, and just trying to get him out of there. And he was such a force inside as a player. Josh Allen, outside linebacker, defensive end from Kentucky. Here was a guy who was a 2-star recruit, almost went to Monmouth College. All of a sudden, later, a Kentucky coach sees him because one of their pass rushers decided he's going somewhere else. So, you know, they signed Josh, and look at the career he's had, just a dominating last 2 years at Kentucky. And certainly Nick Bosa, who's very similar to his brother Joey, who was an early first-round pick of the Chargers, got hurt early last year, but man, he can rush the quarterback, and he is really, really, really talented in a position you don't see a lot of in this game, and that is the ability to come off the edge and rush the quarterback. And certainly, Sweat from Mississippi State. Man, you know, he's a tremendous athlete, always wanted to play basketball, goes to Michigan State, got into a little bit of trouble there, but man, the last 2 years you watched him with the Bulldogs. He's been a man out on the field. And he goes to the combine, you know, and you just see his athleticism. It matched what the production says. So those 4 guys, you take a look at that, that's pretty strong, real early in the draft. And I think Devin White's going to be in that bunch too. While Kyler Murray, he's going to be the top pick. He's going to go to Arizona. Then I think you're going to see that run on defensive players.
Right. When you look at positions with the most depth, in other words, okay, you got quality at the top towards defensive line, what are some positions where you say, man, I tell you what, you go deep in the 2nd, 3rd round, and you're still going to get a quality player to come in and play for you immediately?
Halfback, wide receiver.
Okay.
Because they're going to get slid down because, you know, just the law of averages is if you're picking a big man, that receiver and that halfback, he gets slotted down. And I think you're going to see a lot of that happen in this draft, where you'll see a lot of running backs and receivers, 2nd, 3rd, and even into the early part of round 4. That's some depth certainly at the tight end position, where you could potentially have 3 first-round pick tight ends. And T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant, both from Iowa, and Irv Smith Jr., Brother Martin, young man who went to the University of Alabama. And then, you know, I think there'll be a little bit of a gap, and then we'll see with Jace Sternberger from Texas A&M, who's a really good prospect. I think he'd be a great fit in what the Saints do.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And why?
I'll never forget, this was in the summer. We just happened to meet up, and Jimbo Fisher tells me, you know, he got that Alabama twang, and he's like, Mike, I got a player. I said, a player? Just one? He said, no, I got more than one. But he said, I got a tight end, Sternberger. He said, that's really something special as a pass catcher. And, man, you watched him. He was big time, and he caught 6 passes of over 30 yards or more. For a tight end, Eric, on a team that has Travion Williams, who is a really good running back, you know, so your coverages are slanted a little bit, but man, he was really good. And I think for LSU fans, they'll always remember he was the guy who made the catch that said it wasn't a catch. Yes. Man, listen, I'll go to my grave saying that was a catch. You know, he caught it and turned with it. Right. No question about it. But I think would be a really good fit in this offense. He's a pass catcher, tall drink of water. He can run pretty well with the football after the catch, and only been sort of a one-year guy in college. But he's got a lot of skills. And in this world today, and what we're looking at, and I think we are in the brink of, you and I will be doing shows on college football free agency, the same way we do NFL free agency. I think we're at that break point now with the NCAA rulings on a couple of quarterbacks that have opened the doors now. The floodgates will come rushing in. Now everybody's going to want to leave. And if the NCAA is going to rule that you can go to another school and don't have to sit out, Eric, we are looking at the free agency world of college football. And, you know, Jace went through the junior college ranks, but I think he's a really good prospect late in round 2.
You're staying with, well, stay with tight ends for a moment, because you mentioned Irv Smith Jr. A lot of folks, myself included, would love to see him in a Saints uniform. That's not going to happen unless somehow they move up and they don't have the capital to do that. Where do you see him projected, and what do you see, and what type of a tight end do you think he'll be in the NFL?
One thing he can do pretty well that you don't see a lot of tight ends do today, he can actually block. Most of these guys are they're like oversized receivers. I'm still waiting for Noah Fant to throw the first block. So, you know, people are I'm waiting for him to throw one. You know, he's a getting away guy, but he's really a receiver playing tight end. TJ's a little different. I've seen TJ when he's been lined up inside. He's a pretty good blocker. Irv can do that. He's a big play guy, too, over the middle. He's got some scoot after the catch for a big man. He catches the football well, been well schooled. He's got some genetics. Got some genetics rolling through him. So I think he's a late first round, very early second round pick. But I could say that about 15 guys that'll fall from 25 to 40, and he's in that range. I think he's actually like 30 for me. So that would put him as a late first-round pick, very early second.
Talk about some Louisiana prospects out there, some that we already know, some that, again, that maybe the average fan out there would not know that are going to be going in this draft.
Well, you know, we talked a little bit about Devin, and he's going to be a top 10 pick. Greedy's a guy, you know what you get. You know, he's a tall, lanky cover corner. He's got tremendous length, really fast, been well schooled at LSU. Now, if you want a guy that can tackle, Greedy's not your guy. But that's not why you got him on the field. You got him to cover. And I think he's going to end up being a teens 20s pick. And I've told a lot of the agents who have clients in that 15 to 25 range, and listen, if you're a wide receiver or defensive back, you might be waiting. No matter what the rating is, you might get pushed back because of the big men in this draft. Interesting, a lot of guys, as Irv Smith left the state. Jerry Tillery is one of them from Notre Dame, the big defensive tackle, and he could be a late first-round pick. Really athletic big man. We probably saw him more as an offensive lineman, and they swung him over to the defensive side. He's been a really good football player, a unique guy, man. He can talk everything. I mean, from A to Z. But he's a very athletic big man. Isaiah Buggs, who's from Ruston, was a verbal commitment to LSU under Coach Miles. When Les got fired, Nick came in, swooped him up, brought him there. He's kind of a tweener player that'll play defensive end, defensive tackle, and be a good part of a rotation. up front, but he's also a guy I think he'll probably end up going second round, maybe very early third. And Cody Ford, who's from Pineville, Louisiana, who's played both tackle and guard at Oklahoma. LSU wasn't recruiting him.
Right.
And he ended up going to OU, has been a really good football player there. Very athletic, big man, knows how to use his arms and hands well. And it'll just be where you want to play him. Do you want him to give it a shot at left tackle or right tackle, or do you move him inside to the guard position? So you'll be hearing a lot of names that have connections to Louisiana, didn't necessarily go to LSU.
Right.
And I think that's always been, you sort of knew that's when it was coming to an end with Les, when a lot of those big name players were starting to leave the state.
Yep. Let's shift to the Saints. And what you, again, free agency is ongoing. But if you look at this draft, some fits for the Saints at positions of need.
Well, right now, no matter what they do, even if you bring in the veteran tight end, you still need a young one.
I agree with that.
At this point, I think you never have enough pass rushers.
Right.
To me, that's part of the deal, and you still don't know what's going to happen. With Rankins, in talking to some of the orthopedic surgeons and people that have worked at Ortho LA, Thibodeau Regional Medical Center, they've told me, that's an injury that'll probably keep him out until October.
Right.
So we're talking about probably PUP list for him, and he'll probably miss the first 6 weeks of the season.
And it's a tough injury for an interior lineman as well.
It's a tough injury for a big man. And we saw Boogie Cousins come back and a little less than a year from it. Now, basketball is a little bit different from football, but still, in a big man injury, that's probably 6 weeks. Who knows what will happen with Onyemata with the probable suspension. And no Tyler Davidson, he's still out there. And so you did bring in Malcolm Brown, but my thing is, if you can get a chance to pick another defensive lineman, I'm going, especially an interior guy, because I do think today that is something you're seeing more and more of. Pressure coming from the inside because you got players there. And also a little bit of a delay blitzes from a linebacker, from a safety coming in, puts a lot of pressure point on that center. He's got to be able to pick all that up. So defensive tackle still an area. And I wouldn't be shocked. They pick a guy, and early, so I'm talking about round 2 now, who can play tackle and guard.
Okay.
Because I think that was a big reason why this offense wasn't quite as effective. When you started to have all those injuries up front, it just wasn't Tehran. You had injuries to Larry Wolford. You had injuries to Andrus Pete. Max was fighting it all year long.
Right.
So the only healthy guy was Ramchak, and even he had some injuries late in the year. If I could find me a guy that could play both, I would take a long look at that. You never have enough cover guys. So I think that'll probably be the areas where they look at. But one of the things this team has been tried and true with Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton has been they've tried to address the obvious needs in free agency to give you some leeway come draft time. They still picking a player of need, but not necessarily having to force a pick with one spot. And I think that's where you make the biggest mistakes. It's going to be hard for a guy, and I hear this all the time about, no guy, you might have one starter. Last year, Marcus Davenport don't get hurt. He's basically a part-time starter.
Yes.
Traquan Smith, wasn't he playing? Look what happened at the other receiver position in that spot. So you're trying to you're not always going to hit like what a draft did 2 years ago.
Right.
But I think you're always looking now for the way the NFL has played role players. They may not be full-time starters, but they part-time starters, and they have a big impact on special teams.
How does the philosophy change at all for the Saints, considering, again, the first pick is not until 62, then 168, 177, 202, 231, 244. Not a lot of picks and not a lot of high picks as well.
Well, my thing about it is you got to trust your scouts. You spend a lot of money. You spend a lot of money on that. And when you don't have early picks, normally the head coach or coaches don't get involved as much. You got to rely on your scouts.
Right.
They may know who the first 100 top 100 is. Once you get past there, then you know a little bit of a bit and a piece on those players, but you're relying on Jeff Ireland, and you're relying on Fontenot. You're relying on your scouting department to lead you down that road, and so you got to go that same route. No matter if you got picks or you don't, I think you got to follow that same philosophy. Though I think in maybe a spot where one of the things when you get past the fourth round, the numbers and ratings are real close. Occasionally you might have a guy slip out because of an injury or attitude or whatever. Is if you got a person, a position of need, you might maybe go that route instead of if he's 151 and the other need area is 155, you know, give me the need spot.
You've been around Sean for a long time since he got here. You think he's sitting pat at 62?
I don't think he's sitting pat at all in this draft. I think, you know, it would shock me if they stayed with the picks they had.
Right.
I think he's going to maneuver.
I agree.
I think he's going to maneuver. He, like every coach, is going to fall in love with somebody. Say, you know what, I want him. Right. Let's do what we got to do
together. Look at Davenport last year.
Camaro.
Yeah.
The year before.
Right.
You know, it's always going to be like that. Brandon Cooks, a few years back, exact same way. And there'll always be teams looking to trade. I think there'll always be that element there. So I would be surprised if they just stayed put with the draft choices they had. I think the philosophy of, hey, let's take care of business this year, and we know Drew's 40 years old, let's get this done. And I just got that feeling they will not be a sit on the hands type football team. Right. They'll be aggressive, and they've always been that way.
Yes. Quarterback. Talk about how deep this draft is in quarterbacks. Are there some late round picks you think could emerge down the line here? What's the situation,
Eric?
there?
If I lived off late round pick quarterbacks, I'd be broke.
Oh yeah,
you know, because I mean, for every
very Tom Brady.
Yeah, there ain't but one, so to speak, in that range. And every once in a while, you find a guy that's really good. In that, you know, Jake Delhomme was an undrafted free agent. So, not saying it doesn't happen, but you can see where you know, and I think there'll probably be 4 quarterbacks going round 1. I think Kyler Murray, Haskins most likely looks like he's going to New York. Drew Lock, who's got a lot of arm talent.
Yes, he does.
And then Daniel Jones from Duke. I just think in this league of either you got one or you're looking for one, those 4 guys will come off the board in the first 30, 35 picks. So, but I got a feeling you'll have 4 quarterbacks going round 1.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Mike Detillier, talking Saints, talking draft. We'll talk some LSU a little bit later on in the program. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll take a quick break to hear from our underwriters. We'll be back. We'll continue the conversation with Mike Detillier.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Mike Detillier. Mike, how can folks get a copy of your publication?
You can go on to saintsreport.com, also MikeDetillier.com, and like I said, we'll have it out first week in April.
Yeah, it's a must-have. I've gotten it for decades now, and it is a must-have.
And you're making me look old. This decade stuff.
Tell you what. Honestly, when the draft was like ESPN, nobody was watching it. And myself, my friend Mike Bazan, we grew up together. And, you know, we'd play hooky from work, from school, whatever it was, to go watch the draft. And course, having a publication like yours really helped you. You know, like I said, they didn't have the internet back then. You had to rely on those type of publications.
I'll never forget, this was a article written by Pete Finney. 1974, I still actually have it at my house. I kept the newspaper all those years. And he talked about one day that Walter Cronkite would be the moderator for the NFL draft. Now, it was tongue-in-cheek at that point, but really, hasn't it turned into that circus where we talking about draft now, 52 weeks a year, I could do shows 7 days a week. Everybody wants to talk about it. And already, you know, people about the 2020 draft. And so it's a never-ending cycle of it, of how it comes down. But, you know, a lot of people say, well, it's overhyped or whatever. Well, it is what it is. If it's so overhyped, why are the ratings so high?
Yes.
You know, my thing is, okay, if it's so high, overhyped, then nobody's watching. Right. But everybody's watching.
Everybody's watching. And then look, everybody's watching NFL Network. Are you kidding me? I mean, they're doing
it's
nothing
It's
but
the same thing with college recruiting. When I see someone write that, I know they have no clue about sports, about that college football recruiting is overrated. My thing is, you the same writer that's going to write if a coach goes down, he didn't recruit well.
Yes.
So how can you say it's overrated? Eric, when I see that for a draft and for recruiting, I know that guy, he's clueless.
Right, because it's the lifeblood of any organization
that would be,
or any program.
It's the heartbeat of it. Hank Stram told me this years ago, it's the heartbeat of everything. At that time, Hank didn't have free agency.
Right.
But his deal is, if you don't get it through the draft, you got issues.
Right.
And he said literally it would be like somebody cut the main arteries off to your heart and say, well, keep breathing. Keep going with it, without it. So that today is such a big part. And today's money game, because of the fact you're spending so much money on free agency that you've got, I hate to use the word, you know, cheap labor, but when you get them in, it is the lowest point.
It is.
It is what it is.
Right.
You're getting them in at a really good price for a couple, 3 years.
Well, and look how you can change a franchise. Look at the Saints over the last few years with their draft that changed this from a 7-9 team to a Super Bowl contender. Didn't do that for free agency. You did it through the draft.
Exactly. And you go back to, you know, we grew up in that era. How did the Steelers, who were perennial losers, and then all of a sudden, Eric, they had 3 or 4 drafts.
Incredible. Hall of Fame drafts.
And in that 74 draft, when you get Lynn Swann, Jack Lambert, John Stallworth, Mike Webster, all in one draft. I mean, that's amazing when you can do that. That goes to show that is the lifeblood of your franchise or a college team, the recruiting part. And now, I think you're going to see a second phase of recruiting because of some of the stuff that is happening behind the scenes in the NCAA.
There you go. Let's talk a little bit about Mark Ingram. Latavius Murray got $7.2 million in guaranteed money on a $14.4 million contract for 4 years. The numbers came out on Tuesday. Josh Kastenstein reported that the Ravens gave Mark Ingram 3 years, $15 million, a $4 million signing bonus, a total guaranteed money of $6 million. The one thing that we talked about, the narrative the last week and a half is, you know what? Baltimore must have given him more guaranteed money, and that's why he went with the Ravens. Didn't go that way. Mike, what happened?
You know, if you've played cards in your life, sometimes that bluffing part doesn't work. And I think that's what happened here. I think Mark's agent messed this up. I think he felt the Saints would cave. Wasn't the case. And the Saints had to make a move with another team trying to get Latavius Murray at that point. And all these rumors about this team and that team being involved with Mark wasn't actually the truth.
It seemed like the whole NFC North was interested, but they really weren't.
So come in with the Ravens thing. And I think it's a good fit for Mark.
I do too.
I think it's a really good fit, but you can't tell me the Saints are better off today with Murray. Just from a personnel standpoint, Ingram's a better player than Murray.
Plus the locker room. What he brings.
That part you cannot.
Those intangibles you cannot replace.
He was the emotional spark plug on this football team. Great locker room guy, and that's difficult to replace. And then the other shoe falls with Max Unger. And that, to me, is huge.
And why? Because a lot of people don't understand. You want to talk about intangibles. What Unger meant to this team?
Man, Eric, it's the most difficult position to play up front. You got your hands on the football every play, so you know what your job is. You got to make that snap correct. But also, you're the guy that gets the other lineman set, all the calls, everything correct on it. And today, I go back to it, so much interior pressure where you've got to pick up this guy, all these stunts that are getting done up front, and linebackers and safeties coming in late. You got to be able to pick that up and also be a good run blocker at that point too. You got a lot on your plate. Look, Max Unger was a really good football player. And we did this show not long after the Jimmy Graham trade. And I told you, listen, for people screaming and hollering, Max Unger is going to make a difference on this football team, and he did.
Oh, he did.
He was a really, really terrific football player. But, you know, eventually, the man upstairs who gave you that talent, he takes it away, and you're starting to break down. And we had got rumors late in the year. I think I said it on this show, be careful with Max, because I think he's got the personality. He knows when it's done, and I'm going to walk away. And his deal is, I'm going back to Hawaii. You know, I'm going to live my life there. So I don't think it came as a shock to the Saints, but you can't tell me that Nick Easton is a better player than Max Unger. So now you've taken a step back, not once but twice on the offensive side of the football. Not that Easton isn't a serviceable player. He is.
He's just not Max Unger.
He's not as good as Unger. Murray is not as good as Mark Ingram is. So, but you got to deal with what you have to deal with, and a lot of that has to do with finances and also to when a player knows when it's time to leave. God bless him for what he did on this football team. And he made the Jimmy Graham trade look really good on the Saints' part.
Iron Man, never missed a game. I mean, again, for the most part, was there almost every snap. What I talked about, again, his ability to be able to pass block for Breeze, who needs to be able to have that alley down the middle with, again, those passing lanes. And then, you know, when you want to look at the intangible, a captain on that line, a leader in the locker room, and then you look at the Ingram situation, well, intangible, again, not just a guy that could run the football, not just a guy that made himself into a receiver, but also a guy that protected Breeze when he passed the ball. So now you're looking at Easton and maybe Murray. So there's a change there for a guy that's getting a little bit up in age in Breeze and has had a comfort level with two guys that, again, have been able to block for him in passing downs.
One thing this team has done a pretty good job of, other than the Olin Krutz, is finding a center.
Yes.
You know, Jeff Fain comes in. He does a terrific job. And Jonathan Goodwin did a really good job.
Yes, he did.
And that's who Easton reminds me a little bit of. A little bit of Jonathan Goodwin, who was kind of a swing player. Center guard, moved him. He's not as bulky as Goody is, but I think Easton will do okay there at center. I think he's a better center than he is a guard. Put it to you that way. But still, you've taken a step back. And even Brian De La Puente, when he came in, he did a solid job.
Well.
He really played well. You got to give him credit that they have been able to kind of find the centers. And the highest priced one, he didn't pan out.
Yes.
Because when you brought Krutz in, man, you thought you were getting a stud player. And basically, he cashed a check and he walked away.
Where's the maturation process on Clapp and Tom right now?
I think Clapp is a better guard than he is a center. And I think you'll see him spend most of his time at that guard position. Cameron Tom's an interesting player, really good athlete, long, lean guy for a center. I think he needs a little bit of work kind of from the waist up, physically getting stronger. But this is Easton's job. It's his. You didn't spend that kind of money to bring him here to be a backup.
True.
So I think you'll see a lot of work from Clapp. But I think Will is a better guard than he is a center at this stage. And we'll see where we go with Tom. They liked him a lot because remember, they protected him.
Yes, he did.
When the Redskins were going to peel him off their practice squad. So we'll see how that goes with it. But, you know, it's Easton's job. But you can't tell me today, looking at it, that this offense is better today than it was when it ended the year. It's not as good because you're not as good at center. You're not as good with the 1B running back. Are you still a playoff team? Absolutely. And you're still one of the early favorites. But you're not quite as good. And that's what free agency sort of does to a team. It sort of chips at you a little bit. That's why the draft is so important.
Right, and then of course you don't have a lot of picks this year, so again you almost have to rely on free agency. Andres Pete, what do you think happens there? Do you think he plays under the $9.6 million fifth-year option, or do you think they extend him?
I would be surprised if they extend him. And if there's a guy that's maybe dealt off for capital,
right,
it may well be Andres. Listen, when he's been healthy, he's a really good player.
Sure.
You got a lot of money tied up in offensive linemen. And so, that part's always involved here. When you look at what you're paying Larry Wolford, at what you're eventually going to have to pay Ryan Ramczyk.
Right. What you're paying Homestead right now.
You can make a pretty strong argument. He's one of the top 2 or 3 right tackles in the game today as a second-year guy. If Armstead's healthy, he's a stud football player in that spot. So that's a lot of money, though, for a guard. But when you think about it, what does this team spend a lot of money on in years? The guard position.
Yes.
So you can kind of weigh it a little bit, but I'd be surprised if they extended it with Andres.
Your thoughts on the re-signing of Teddy Bridgewater?
He's the heir apparent. I think when they acquired him from the Jets, that maneuver was, one, an insurance policy. Because, okay, you entering the season with a 39-year-old quarterback, and he had been, knock on wood, healthy.
Yes, true.
But what happened, they saw what Tom Savage was. You had to get something different. But I think he's a lot more than that today. I think he's the heir apparent. He's the guy that I think they want to pass the baton to take over for Drew Brees. You can't judge him on that final game against Carolina. No, that's a glorified preseason game.
Plus, you're throwing him to the Lions.
Yeah, come on. Carolina did what they had to do in that game, and the Saints kind of, they put it in a real low gear for the final. But you look at him, he fits this offense very well for what he does best. He's really a very accurate, short, intermediate passer. What this offense is built on.
True.
Just that.
Plus, he's athletic.
But we didn't know that, how athletic he'd be coming back from that knee injury.
Right.
But when you watched him those preseason games with the Jets, you saw he had his wheels back and he could throw the football, and he physically looked stronger. And I think that'll help him in the deeper throws downfield. But I would be shocked if that conversation has not been had yet between Drew Brees and Sean Payton, because I think they have that type of relationship. I'm going to tell you, this is when it's going to end. And so, and I'm sure some of that gets relayed over to Teddy that, hey, this is going to be your team. If it's 2020, if it's 2021, I've always felt Drew had one more year left in him, one more roll with it. And we'll see what happens to him physically after this season. But he's the guy. I think there's no doubt, and there's no, I think, tighter bond on a football team than the quarterback and the head coach.
Yes.
When you win, the quarterback and the head coach get way too much glory.
True.
And they get way too much blame when you lose, because those are the two guys everybody's pointing at. And you got to have a special relationship with that player.
Have they built that now?
And I think they've built that. That he would go to this extent to bring Teddy back in. $7 million for what you're looking at as a backup quarterback in a one-year setting.
Right.
That's a lot of change.
And then on Bridgewater's part, turning down the hometown team where you knew you would be a starter, even though they're probably going to draft a quarterback.
My thing about it is, even if you sign there, you're signing to get beat up. I mean, give me one real strong area on the Dolphins football team today, and you'd have now the special teams is not bad, but
they lost their coach. He's in New Orleans now.
Yeah, and well, you look at the Dolphins, they looking like this is almost like a tank for Zion.
Yeah,
they are tanking for Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama or the Herbert kid from Oregon.
Sure.
That's what it looks like to me. So you throw into the Wolves in Miami in that spot. I think it was an easy decision once you thought it out and you knew what you were getting involved with, unless the money was astronomically different.
And it wasn't.
Man, I'm staying with the Saints here. Why would I want to go to the Dolphins when I know a year from now I'm back in the same spot?
Yeah. Let's talk about two defensive linemen the Saints have signed. You spoke a little bit on Malcolm Brown. What do you like about him? And then also Mario Edwards Jr.
Mario is a swingman who has played defensive end, but he's played his best football when they put him at defensive tackle or when they've kicked him inside. He's an all-potential guy. You know, he coming out of high school, he was the #1 ranked defensive lineman in the country. Wow. He played pretty well at Florida State, but he was not a stud player. And then he's had a host of injuries in the NFL. It's been a hip, a neck, ankle. Got cut, goes to the Giants, part of the rotation there. And he understands his role. He's a niche player. And so I think where you're going to see him used a lot, kick him inside on third down, because he's a good pass rusher and he's an athletic mismatch for the inside players. And they got him at a good price. And he knew he's going to be the backup to certainly the leader now defensively now in Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport.
Yes.
And you're going to get a lot of playing time because you're going to want to rotate those guys and keep them healthy. But I think his real asset is his ability to get pressure from the inside. Malcolm Brown, he's a big space eater in the middle. He's a big man. What was interesting this past summer, his defensive line coach, Brendan Daly, is a regular at our offensive defensive lineman camp at Nicholls State. You know, we doing an interview and him and I are talking, cameras are rolling, and he was just trying to tell me, Mike, there is no special pill, there is no golden key to what we do. You know, everybody kind of does it the same. But he said, you know, the golden guy is Belichick. Sure. You know, he gets you the players that are right for what he's done. He said, you know, he gets real smart players for us. And he puts a lot of emphasis on intelligence. And then we started talking about defensive tackles. And he said, well, I got a guy here, Malcolm Brown. He said, one, he's a really good athlete. But secondly, he accepted his role that in our defense, as that nose guard, tying up multiple blocks, you're kind of holding everything up, and our linebackers and safeties come through the gaps and make the tackles. And he said, you know, he accepted that. Now, he said, he's a pretty decent pass rusher for a big man. But he said, what he did really well, he accepted what we told him, and he played at a real high level for us. But he said, we constantly rotated our nose guards because we knew late in the game, and how many games you see it. Right. Team's down by 10 points, 13 points. Man, that quarterback's back there. He can knit a sweater. There's nobody around him. He said, you know, the key for us has been we collapse the inside pocket and we take away that ability for the quarterback to step up and make the throw. So he talked very highly of Malcolm, and I think, you know, he's going to be the starting nose guard for you. He's a much bigger, much more talented, more physical player than Tyler Davidson. On that part, the Saints are better today up front than they were when they ended the season.
Do you think Davidson comes back?
I think that there's another move to be made, or maybe two, defensive line-wise.
Well, we heard about Robert Quinn this morning. Actually, and $11.8 million, possible trade. Cowboys are interested. The question is, again, do the Saints want him? And then how could you get him with again, I mean, I would think you're not giving up your second-round pick. Nope. It's got to be, again, a late-round pick.
No, I think the Dolphins are on a fire sale. I think you could get it for cheap. Maybe everybody said, well, give up a fourth-round pick. My deal is you don't have a fourth-round pick this year. Now, unless the Dolphins are willing to wait for that pick, which they might be willing to do 2020. I think they're looking to dump salaries. Anybody who's got any kind of money, I think they're looking to dump them at this stage.
What kind of player is he at this point in his career?
He's still a good player, but, man, I remember when the Saints played him in St. Louis, and he got after Charles Brown. And I remember after the game, that was it for Charles Brown. I remember Sean said, I've seen enough. Something to that extent. I don't really know if that's the exact, but it's close. And he was a big-time player, got paid a lot of money. What I think is 6.5 sacks he had last year. So, you know, if you can get him for a fourth-round pick, give me a fourth-round pick that's going to get you 6.5 sacks. But again, you're talking about a salary level in that $9-10 million range.
And you're talking about a one-year rental.
And that's what you're getting with him, a one-year rental. But I do think, Eric, that is part of what you have seen for success in this league. The Eagles did it 2 years ago. The Rams did it a year ago. Now, again, they didn't win it all. But what have the Patriots done better than everybody?
Right.
1 year guys,
Right.
2 year guys. Hey,
know when to get rid of them,
hey,
know when to hold on
thanks
to
so
them.
much. We're going
Right.
to pay Gronk. We're going to pay Brady. We're going to pay the kicker. Everybody else, hey, it's been nice meeting you. You've been great. We got you a ring, and we get you paid.
Right.
And so they have done it. They drew the blueprint up for what you've seen the Eagles and the Rams do a little bit later.
Jared Cook visited the Saints. What's the situation there?
I think he's looking around for a better deal.
Right. Is he going to come? Because it doesn't look like he's making any visits.
And Jared, he kind of, I think, understands where his money level is as a 32. Well, he's going to be a 32-year-old tight end. He's a glorified receiver playing tight end. Basically, that's what he is. I covered him a lot doing stuff with the Titans,
Right.
And so he's a big target tight end. One thing he does really well, Eric, and I think he's a perfect fit for this offense, is his ability to reach out outside of his body zone and make a catch. You'll see catches, man, he's way extended and he'll make that catch almost look routine for him. What he caught, 68 passes on a bad Raider team. Man, he would have had 90 catches here on this Saints football team. So I think he's a great fit, but he's also a rental. He's also basically a 2-year rental for your football team, and then you'll have to bring somebody else along. He would be a really good pickup in this offense because God still blessed him athletically at 31, 32 years old, and he still has a couple years left, but also, too, he's a fit for what the Saints do offensively.
Nice spot if they can get a player like that and then draft a player.
And draft the young one.
Right, no doubt. Switch to LSU. Coach O gets an extension. Talk about it.
I thought this would have happened earlier.
So did I.
I think we did a show,
and
he told me, hey, listen, we got a new deal coming. That was back in December. Now, maybe some of the details weren't quite set yet, and maybe he kind of spilled the beans before he should have, and he told the wrong guy, so to speak. But, I think with this, he solidifies the fact that he's going to be here. Financially for him, come on.
Right.
Look where we grew up.
Right.
Man, $500,000 more. Man, he's making unbelievable money. He's got a job that he wants. He has shown that he can recruit the state well and also extend out. And he's got a team that I think when all these publications come out, they're going to be in the top 5 or 6 in every publication. And there's 2 big games. Early against Texas, late against Alabama. But I think it takes away the talk that other coaches were saying he won't be here.
Yes.
And so I do think, listen, he's done what he's had to do. And I'm interested to see how different defensively this. I think offensively, I know what Ed wants. He wants to run the ball. And they'll use more of the spread offense than they ever have before. I'm interested in defensively. Last year, the one area they didn't do well was rush the quarterback. And now he's got, arguably, the best player that only played 1 game, and that's Caleb Chason. Now, when you watch that Miami game, he didn't have 1 cat blocking him. He had 2 guys on him trying to slow him down. If he's back fully from the knee injury, and he's a man out on that football field, you got yourself something and totally different than what you saw a year ago. And the secondary is going to be good. Grant Delpit's an unbelievable player. When O kind of told me, I've never given a player as much leeway as I've given Grant. And he said, no, I take that back. He said, I did once. Troy Polamalu. And when he said, I was like, whoa, that's some mighty big words. And, Fulton comes back healthy. You got a really big-time player on one corner. Stingley's gotten the rave reviews. Phillips plays the way he did a year ago. He's the next big thing for LSU at linebacker. So you got some talent there. The biggest moccasins to fill is Cole Tracy. Because you can say, oh, well, the freshman will come in and take over.
But you don't know.
What? To give you that consistency? Come on, LSU has not had that in a field goal kicker. And listen, they weren't even getting consistency on extra points, much less field goals. So how that situation works out as the field goal kicker, I think is crucial for games that'll be close, and we know every year. Florida, that Texas game. Auburn has been nip and tuck every year with that. The Alabama game hasn't been close, but all the other games have been really, really tight in those settings.
What's your take on Will Wade, and what's your take on the fallout of Will Wade? And do you think those tentacles will reach Joe Oliva?
Well, if it doesn't, I don't know what will. Here's my thing about it. You got to do one of two things. Either you had to say, you know what, you broke your contract, you've went outside the realm, you got the FBI investigating, got to go, we fire you. Or we hold on to you and let this play out. In essence, what you've done, you've put Will Wade in basketball purgatory.
True.
And you've gotten the fans all riled up. You made a good decision in bringing in Will, but there were rumors about Will even before he got to LSU that you knew about. You couldn't stick your head in the sand.
You investigated before he came, before you brought him in.
But that, to me, is a total drop of the ball, and we have seen this over and over from the top levels at LSU. This was also the top people that went after Jimbo Fisher a few years back to get rid of Les.
Yes.
When they started feeling heat, all of a sudden, oh man, we got to back off. And you got the former governor of the state getting involved. He could barely handle the state affairs, and he's telling you how to run a football team. Man, I'd have told him, listen, you take care of the state, and we'll take care of LSU deal. Then look at what happened late. Once they lost the Florida game, I kind of thought any chance of Ed getting the job was over with.
Right.
And it looked as though it was Tom Herman.
Right.
But then when you knew behind the scenes, Herman was angling for the Texas job all
using you as leverage.
And so he used LSU to get it. You were part of the pawn in that. So what do? As soon as Herman tells you, I'm going to Texas, you hurriedly call the press conference and you bring in Coach O. So again, this is part of the pattern here at LSU. I think it's bad for the university. It's bad for the program at whole at basketball. And I got told this by another college basketball coach a year ago. He was like, Mike, man, I think the world of Will Wade as a coach. And he's a really good coach, a great recruiter, but you're going to have the NCAA up his skirt. Because when you're getting those type players at a school that really had not had a lot of success, you almost, and he kind of compared it a little bit to what happened at Ole Miss. Now, all of a sudden, Ole Miss, they're getting players from all over, and it opened up the Pandora box in that particular deal. So my thing is, where they really dropped the ball is not making a decision on Will. You either had to keep him and let's roll this through, which I think would have been a popular thing and maybe not the right thing, or say, you know what, you breached your contract, we'll see you in court.
I agree with you. The decision should have been made in October,
not
in March.
I agree with that 1,000%. But again, you've got an athletic director that can't make a decision for anything.
Right. Agreed.
And so now, how he survives this, Eric, he doesn't, in my opinion. I don't see how he can. After all of this shuffling of other cards all over, the only thing that could save him would be LSU to get into the national championship game in football, because we all know one thing. Football is the goose that basically lays the golden egg. Didi's got a shot in the gymnastics. Now, Didi's been there. She's the longest tenured coach in SEC history, longer than Adolph Rupp. You know, that's unbelievable, and she's got a shot there. And the highest point for LSU sports, because to start the season, Paul Maneri's baseball team was ranked #1. Now, all of a sudden, this comes crumbling down around you, and how you reacted was absolutely horrible.
Mike Detillier, as always, we appreciate you being with us on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television, 9 o'clock every Friday night, and always at ericasher.com. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. That is noon until 2 weekdays. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes I've mentioned of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to Mike Detillier. Remember, MikeDetillier.com, SaintsReport.com for your draft report. Also want to thank our WLA production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.